Welcome to RickRackRuby. I'm Laura Kluvo. Today we will be making this Farmhouse Gnome stocking ornament. It's fun and easy, so let's get started. To make the Farmhouse Gnome stocking ornament, we'll start with a pattern. You can draw this. It's not hard. It's 3 inches across at the top and a total of about 7 1/4 inches tall. This section here for the gnome, I had to make it a little bit taller than I usually do to accommodate all the fur and the hat and everything. Anyway, the cuff is 2 inches tall, 3 inches across, and we'll stitch this and fold it up like that. I created patches for the toe and the heel, which aren't really necessary, but they're fun. For the heel, I just squared it off, and remember when you're tracing onto the paperback fusible interfacing, you flip it to the wrong side. And then I fused it to the back of this flannel and cut it out. And the same thing for the toe. Here's the toe, which I just kind of made a shape like that. Flipped it over. I made a little message to myself. It says this side. Fused it onto the back of the flannel. So this will go on like this. And let's get started. To make the Farmhouse Gnome stocking ornament, we'll start with a pattern. You can draw this. It's not hard. It's 3 inches across at the top and a total of about 7 1/4 inches tall. This section here for the gnome, I had to make it a little bit taller than I usually do to accommodate all the fur and the hat and everything. Anyway, the cuff is 2 inches tall, 3 inches across, and we'll stitch this and fold it up like that. I created patches for the toe and the heel, which aren't really necessary, but they're fun. And then I traced that onto some paperback fusible. Anyway, I traced that onto some, what is this called? Paperback fusible interfacing, I guess. All right. Anyway, for the heel, I just squared it off, and remember when you're tracing onto the paperback fusible interfacing, you flip it to the wrong side. And then I fused it to the back of this flannel and cut it out. And the same thing for the toe. Here's the toe, which I just kind of made a shape like that. Flipped it over. I made a little message to myself. It says this side. Fused it onto the back of the flannel. So this will go on like this. And let's get started. The stocking front, I have fused on some interfacing. I've also fused some interfacing to the back of the stocking front shape. I cut the back from this blue and green flannel, and then the lining will be from this red and black. This is really a lot of fun to pick out all these fabrics and shapes and colors. This is how the front of the stocking will look. And I will go ahead and fuse, this isn't fused, fuse the heel and the toe by peeling off this backing paper. Great. and this backing paper. Great. Doesn't always come off that perfectly. I'm going to iron this and then I'll be back. This is fused, and now come down a little bit and stitch across, right? I'll stitch across right here and fold it back up. Then I'll fold this up. I'm going to press that so it's nice and creased. And now I will trim that cuff piece a little bit. I could have come down a tiny bit lower. And then just to secure it, I will do a little stitch around here just to hold it. Now I'm going to add a decorative stitch around the edges of the heel and the toe. I'm going to use my, I don't know what it's called, but it's like a blanket stitch, but it's double, so it's nice and heavy. And I'm going to do that blanket stitch around this edge and this edge. Here's how it looks. I've blanket stitched around this edge and this edge, but I don't really need to do the outer edges because they'll be in the seam allowance. And I just chose not to do it up here because the gnome's red hat will be extended over the cuff, and I just don't think we need to blanket stitch this edge. Here's the pattern for the hat. It is 2 5/8 tall. Let's just go with 2.5. And 2 inches wide. And I just folded it in half and cut it to a cone, opened it up. And then I traced this shape onto the paperback fusible web. And then I ironed it onto some red felt, and I'll cut it out. Now I'm peeling the paper off to reveal this fusible web, and I'll center it, making sure that I have a seam allowance all around, kind of about like that. That looks good. I think it could be a little bit higher. That looks good. And I'm going to fuse that on with my iron. I let that cool for a minute, and now I'm going to blanket stitch around all 3 sides of the hat. That looks good. Yeah, it's time to assemble our stocking. I'm going to return my machine to a basic stitch, and then I have 2 lining pieces, which are this red and black check. This is the right side. I will sew 1 lining piece to the front along the top edge, and 1 lining piece to the back along the top edge. It's right along here with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I'll open these up and pin them right sides together, matching the lining pieces and the front and back. Oops. There we go. Like this. I'm turning the seam allowance down toward the stocking, not toward the lining, but toward the stocking, like this. I'll start to pin it. Then I'll pin it all around. I'll leave an opening right here in the bottom of the foot. Flannel has that nap to it, which helps everything stick together. It's very easy to sew with. I'm going to start here at the bottom of the foot and stitch all the way around. I'll back stitch here and here. Here we go. Now I'm going to clip these inner curves here and here, and then turn everything through the opening. Before I turn the lining in, I'm going to sew this opening closed. I'll just fold these seam allowances in and top stitch. So it looks like that, and now I will tuck that inside. I'm going to use black baker's twine on this project, and I've learned from experience that it's really it's really better to put this bow on first, because otherwise it can kind of get stuck in the beard. So I'm going to go ahead and form this. I'm going to put the baker's twine all the way around the stocking, and then I secured it with a little stitch right there and a knot, and then I'm going to tie a little bow. I hope I explained that well. Kind of tilt it to the side a little bit, and I'm going to secure that with a little bit of hot glue and tie these streamers into little overhand knots. There's one. There's two. And that is secured with a stitch, and then I'll add a drop of glue in here and press the center of the bow into the glue. That looks good. For the beard, I'm going to use the same exact pattern as the hat, but of course I'll turn it upside down. Here's my fur. It's really thick. You do not have to use you don't have to use fur that's this thick, but this is what I have. So I will pin it, and first I'm going to rough cut it, and now I will very carefully trim it from the back, only going through the backing and not cutting any of the fur. So there's the beard, and before I glue it on, I have a couple extra steps. First of all, I want to cut a little half circle in the center for the nose. I'll fold it in half and then just cut out a little divot from the center like that. And then, and I'm extra generous with that because I'm actually going to fold down these two sides and hot glue them before I glue this to the stocking so that I don't show the raw edge of the fur. It's very simple. Just a little row of glue here and a little row of glue here. And then press that raw edge in and press that raw edge in. There's still a little bit of dip for the nose. I don't want too big of a dip, but just enough. And then the other good thing about folding those over is that it's easy to shape a mustache. All right, so that'll be glued right here underneath the hat. Nice and close. I don't want too much of this fabric to be showing. It should be just hat and beard. I feel like this is a tiny bit too long, so I'm going to take a little bit of it out. You'll have to just kind of gauge on your own project. I feel like if my fur were not so long, it would be fine. Yeah, that's a little bit better. All right, now I have these little 1/4-inch furniture buttons for the nose. But before I glue it on, I want to add a little bit of blush. I think it just looks a little bit more lifelike with a hint of blush. I'm just using a Q-tip to apply some blush. I am protecting my work surface with an index card so that this blush doesn't get all over. That looks good. So now I'm going to glue that nose on right there. It may even overlap the hat a little bit, which is fine. To style the mustache, I'm going to spray a little bit of hairspray on my fingers and then draw the mustache out to the side and twist it to shape the mustache. And as a bonus, he smells like herbal essence. Then I think I want to add a little something over this bow. I have a wooden snowflake, which is from Target, a little white wooden star, which is also from Target. I think I'm going to use the star. Just a drop of hot glue. Hold that for a second. And then finally, a hanging loop. From the black and white twine. Thank you for watching my tutorial. If you're enjoying my videos, please like, share, and subscribe.